one became something to test for, it was a very limited blood test for a limited number of things, and now it's much larger in scope as a possibility. So sometimes somebody can be tested, and then is the blood kept someplace so they don't have to, it can be run again against a new panel, or do they have to come in for new testing?
Once in a while, there will be ways that the samples are kept over the years, but we generally do run new samples if we're running a new test. The samples really are only good for so long.
So another stick or maybe saliva?
Correct,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
not so bad.
Yes, yes. And that just assures that we have a good sample that hasn't started to degrade over the years, so that you are getting the correct DNA information. But that is a good point, because even testing for the BRCA1 and 2 genes has changed over the years. When I first trained as a genetic counselor, there was one level of testing, and then around 2006 or so, there became a second tier to that test, which was only done in certain families who had very strong family histories. So there are many families that had the first tier of testing but didn't have that second tier done, and it may be worth going back and finishing off the rest of the BRCA testing, in addition to thinking about other cancer genes as well.
Right, absolutely. Well, that's true. Now, I know that more than once family members, knowing about my history and the fact that I had testing, asked me for the results, which I was happy to share. And then in their discussions with their genetic counselors in different parts of the country, they shared this piece of paper and were tested at least for the same allele, you know, the same
mutation
broken gene, the same
exactly.
mutation, yes. And in one case, one first cousin, we're very much alike. He said, well, I'm not surprised. I had the same thing. So, but the good news is, how was that information helpful to the next generation, meaning his daughter and my daughter, and perhaps our sons at some future point. But his daughter decided to have the test and came back negative.
Yes.
And my daughter had the test and came back negative. So the good news is, that particular genetic mutation is over in our two families with our generation, at least as far as we know now, which is really very nice news.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it doesn't mean your family members
No,
can't get
no,
cancer,
no.
but it means they are not at this increased risk
Exactly.
where they have to really pay extra attention and have extra screening. And that was important for your family, I know, again, with your family history. To have that piece of information is both looking forward, what are the risks moving forward that we have to be worried about, but it also serves as an explanation for why your family members got cancer in the first place. It wasn't anything that they had done or not done. They really had this genetic predisposition.
Absolutely. And there are still things, even if you're not ready to have genetic testing, because there's still things you can do to take good care of yourself. It never hurts to exercise and eat well, and there's certainly no guarantees, right? But it's good for all of us to try and live a healthy lifestyle. I say try. These are goals.
Yes.
Aspirational.
Nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect if you have to have that chocolate or occasional glass of wine.
Moderation.
Yeah,
That's okay.
right.
Quality of life is important as well. You want to be a happy individual as well as healthy, hopefully. And it does put you, I think, in a different position if you end up getting diagnosed with cancer and you have other health issues at the same time. That makes it a much more difficult process than for folks who are otherwise fairly healthy and get diagnosed with cancer. Your options are much different at that point.
Let's talk for a minute about the Ashkenazi population.
Yes.
Over the years, you know, there have been op-ed articles or articles in the paper and whatever. Should all Ashkenazi Jewish women be tested? And you did mention 1 in 4. That seems
1 in 40.
1 in 40. Excuse me.
Yes.
Yes, 1 in 4 would be much worse. So that seems a very aggressive approach without any other indication whatsoever. Maybe talk to me a little bit about whether that's being medically recommended or not recommended, or if the only thing you know about your cancer history is that you're Ashkenazi Jewish historically, but you don't have any evidence of cancer in your immediate family, is that a risk factor in and of itself?
Well, there are a lot of factors to consider. So certainly some folks have information about their family members and nobody got cancer. That is a family situation that is much more reassuring to me that there probably isn't something hereditary there, even though that person may be of Ashkenazi Jewish ancestry. And then there are a lot of folks, unfortunately, who do not have a lot of family history information. Certainly many families, that is a result of World War II and their family members being in concentration camps and not surviving that time period. So we have a lack of information. We have a big question mark about did those extended family members ever develop cancer? They didn't live long enough to find out. So that's a concern, a real concern that we have to think about. As it stands right now, for the most part, if folks are Ashkenazi Jewish but have no reasonable family history of breast or ovarian cancer, we tend not to offer that testing, and insurances tend not to cover that testing. But there is a movement, there is a conversation out there about that very question. Should we just be doing screening on all folks of Ashkenazi Jewish ancestry? Should we be doing it on all folks, period, regardless of their ancestry? That is a conversation that's happening. You know, part of our conversations as genetic counselors is always, what will the insurance cover? These can be expensive tests. The costs have definitely come down over the years, but they are certainly a concern for folks financially. So we have to sort of have that conversation about what makes sense for that individual. And there are some laboratories that offer out-of-pocket costs that are not prohibitive to some families. So there are a few different labs that offer testing in the range of a couple $100s, a few $100s. So folks may say, even though my insurance won't cover the testing, to me this is important information that I would like to have, and even though I may not have a strong family history, I'd like to consider this option as well. So there are these different avenues that can be explored with the counselor.
I think a fair takeaway from this discussion is that if you're of Ashkenazi Jewish descent, there's a variety of information you may have or you may not have, and the best place to start is with your healthcare provider to have the conversation as to whether there's any reasonable presumptions that you should make, or go talk to a genetic counselor and they can do. You know, we didn't talk about this. It's like a tree. A lot of people now go on Ancestry, you know, different websites and put together their family tree. You can do a similar cancer tree with the genetic counselor, and they can map out who had what cancer at what age, and you know,
and
did they
that's
survive?
part of collecting the family history, which actually is a great thing for everyone to be doing, whether you're Ashkenazi Jewish, whether you have a cancer family history. Talk with your relatives, talk with your older family members about how many people there are in the family, what folks had for major illnesses, how old they were when they passed away, and take that information into your doctors to say, you know, here's what I know about my family history. Is there something we should be concerned about? Either from a hereditary standpoint, that there may be one obvious hereditary factor like a BRCA mutation, or you know, we see this sort of pattern of high blood pressure in the family, and maybe we need to be extra careful for you. Maybe there are other things that you could be doing. So it's not just cancer related. Health information in general is very important for folks to try to collect as much as they can, and then that helps as they meet with, again, their providers, or if they meet with a genetic counselor, if you've already done that homework, if you will, that helps us in our conversation understand that history in the family and make those good decisions moving forward.
What's the youngest age person of Ashkenazi Jewish descent with a family history of breast cancer that you've counseled and even maybe tested?
Well, I have seen quite a few folks in their late teens, early 20, 18, 19, 20 for genetic counseling. There are a number of reasons why that may not be the best time to pursue testing. The medical management guidelines generally don't start until late 20s. So we may start that initial conversation based on the family history or any prior testing in the family, and then that person can make that decision down the road if this is the right time for me to think about testing, or do I maybe want to hold off for a few few years. With BRCA, we don't tend to see childhood cancers, so we don't often see folks in the early teens.
So sometimes they come in maybe with a parent or something, so that they're getting used to the whole idea, but it's good to have information and to learn at a young age even. And just watch the science and see what's going on.
They hear these family stories. They know that mom has been tested, or an aunt has been tested, or dad has been tested, and I'm concerned about what does that mean for me, and we give them, again, that information in that context.
Well, I think the takeaways today are that every individual and every family has different circumstances, but there are genetic counselors at the Ferre Institute, and you can find them at St. Peter's and elsewhere, and they're here to provide a lot of information on a very individualized basis. So I thank you for coming today.
You're very welcome.
If anybody needs to reach the Ferre Institute, they're online, and you'll find their number, and of course you can call 2 Life, and we will direct you to genetic counseling as well as needed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mara.